Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to be able to speak on both the bills that we're dealing with together today and to indicate my support for these bills. I have to say that it has been at the very least amusing to watch the government's contortions in an attempt to create a sense of concern that Labor was ever going to not support the bills, given that all the indications we've given since the initiatives were announced on budget night have indicated quite clearly that we were intending to support the bills. As many others, including the opposition leader, has said, the ALP's position reflected the fact that many of the initiatives were actually ones that we put in place that the government actually abolished in the 2014 budget. And so, of course, it is a pleasure to be able to support these initiatives. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome a positive backflip by the government and to see the opportunity to support measures that we felt were important and useful for the well-being of small businesses in government, and we were very disappointed to see the government abolish at the last budget. So, of course, we support the appropriation bills that are before us. In particular, I just want to outline some of the major initiatives under the bills, to have the opportunity to talk about the implications in my own area of the seat of Cunningham, and then also to talk about a less happy side to this story, which is my portfolio area, and what's actually happened with small businesses in the skills space. First of all, the first bill before us is the Tax Laws Amendment Bill. This is the bill which amends the Income Tax Rates Act of 1986. Its purpose is to reduce the company tax rate from 30% to 28.5% for companies that are small business entities, that is, those with an aggregated turnover of less than $2 million. For all other companies over the threshold, the company tax rate, of course, will remain at 30%, and the government's estimated financial impact of the bill is approximately $1.45 billion over the forward estimates. The new tax rate of 28.5% for incorporated small businesses, of course, will take effect from 1 July this year, and it commences a two-tier tax system for business in Australia. Labor supports the bill. Schedule 1 of the second bill in particular amends the accelerated depreciation rules for small businesses by temporarily increasing the threshold under which certain depreciating assets, costs incurred in relation to depreciating assets, and general small business pools can be written off. The increased thresholds of $20,000 applies from 7:30 p.m. on the 12th of May 2015, budget night, until the 30th of June 2017. From the 1st of July 2017, the threshold reverts to $1,000. So the increased threshold is available to all small businesses. The second schedule of that bill amends the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997 to allow primary producers to claim an immediate deduction for capital expenditure on water facilities and fencing assets, and to deduct capital expenditure on fodder storage assets over the 3 years. And the date of the effect of that measure, of course, is also the 12th of May 2015. I have to say, I think that the small business measures number 1 bill, that is that dealing with the tax rate, I want to put on record the fact that, in fact, Labor has supported and had a significant commitment to reducing the tax rate for small businesses. In fact, we had a proposal to do just that when we were in government. It is interesting for the record that those opposite at the time actually voted down that small business tax decrease. They said that it was unaffordable. It's hard to see what the difference is now, given that they are a government who claim that there's a debt and deficit issue that must be handled. Now, apparently, this is actually a positive stimulatory measure. The only difference really is that that was a Labor government proposal, and now it's a Liberal government proposal, Liberal National government proposal. So it is a bit interesting to see how the what was in when Labor in government a unaffordable measure has now become a critically important one, but, you know, we welcome that. And I also want to just touch on the point that it's an important contribution, I believe, by the Leader of the Opposition in his budget reply speech, where he indicated that we would be keen to talk to the government about the opportunity to actually make that a more significant 5% decrease. And I think that given that there has been a history now of some time across both the Rudd-Gillard governments and the Abbott government to look at ways to stimulate small business activities in all our communities, that would be a good opportunity for the government to take up. I think that it's particularly critically important to also acknowledge that the measures in the second bill before us, which introduce accelerated depreciation for small business entities and primary producers, is something that we support. We support it because we actually introduced it just a few short years ago. We in government introduced an instant asset write-off, increased it from 1,000 to 5,000 and then further increased it to 6,500. In fact, it was this government in its first budget that then wound it right back to $1,000. It's hard to understand why something that they didn't like only 12 months ago they now do like, but we can only be grateful that that's the direction they've taken rather than cutting something again. The instant asset write-off and other tax measures that are designed to help small businesses and business more broadly are important initiatives, and they are proposals that will make a difference to small businesses in many of our communities. We agree that they are great for small business, and we have indeed done so since the budget week. I also want to just talk about the other side of the debate that's occurring around these initiatives. Obviously, many members on both sides of the House have talked about the role that these initiatives will play in stimulating activity, innovation, business development and the opportunities for improved efficiency and productivity in small businesses across our area. And I think, you know, that is true, and I certainly hope that that's how it plays out. The other area that is talked about quite a bit is the capacity to address jobs, and this is what I specifically want to focus on. I've expressed in the Parliament my serious concern that there was no vision for jobs in the budget, and there was specifically no articulated vision for how we would ensure that we had the flow-through of people to take up whatever new jobs the government proposes will flow from these small business initiatives. The reason I have concern about this is that there are ongoing and consistent reports from business about a skills mismatch, about their inability to actually access the skilled people that they need for the emerging job opportunities that they have. Only today, on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, you can see another story about feedback from businesses about their concern that there's been such a significant drop, over 20%, in commencements of apprenticeships, and their concern that the ability to find young people with the right match to undertake an apprenticeship is getting increasingly difficult. And I should point out there's also an over 20% decrease in completions of apprentices as well. So even those they take on are not actually getting through to complete their apprenticeship. And I think this is a major failure by the government, and it's a direct relationship to small business opportunities. I mean, when I talk to small businesses in my region, I know members across the House would find the same experience. Many of them, the number one concern for them is not just getting the right skills to match the jobs that they might have available. They're just good people who want to give young people a go. And that's a consistent message I hear from so many small business people, particularly as many of them themselves have gone through trades training or some of the paraprofessions that are available in our TAFE and vet sector. And they've used that qualification, that skill and experience to set themselves up as small business operators. And, you know, they've got families, they've got nieces and nephews, they're connected into their communities. Of course they are, very, very much so. I would suggest probably more significantly than the big businesses that many of us have in our regions. Small businesses are significantly community people, and they really want to give young people a go. And so it is a particularly important task for government to be supporting the next generation of tradies and small business people, giving them the opportunity to get a leg up and a start in their own small business. That's why I've been particularly critical of the government on a number of cuts that they made. The first one that I want to talk to the House about is the program that Labor had in government specifically addressing this, and it was called the Apprentice to Business Owner program. So it was actually a program that recognised that many apprentices finish their training period, quite often with a large employer who, you know, to their credit, had an ongoing apprenticeship program, but they would put people through the program and only a few of them would be kept on at the end. Then the others needed to go out and find either alternate employment or, as so many do, set themselves up as their own small business. And that has a whole range of additional skills and knowledge that are quite separate from the sort of training they got in their apprenticeship. It might relate to business regulation requirements, it might relate to excuse me, Deputy Speaker, marketing and promotion, a range of other skills and knowledge. And so this program offered training to post-apprentices so they could actually get that skills and knowledge and get themselves set up and operating as a small business. What happened to that program? It was abolished in the 2014 budget. The other issue that's raised by small business and reflected in the Daily Telegraph story today is getting young people with the right level of skill to actually undertake an apprenticeship. And employers, and I'm sure all of the members here have a similar experience in their areas, people wanting to take on an apprentice will often say to you, I can't get someone who really has the ability to undertake this. They need some more language and literacy, numeracy, some other forms of job readiness training to be able to for the employer to have the confidence to put them on as an apprentice. And so in answer to that in government, we had a program called the Apprentice Access Program. And this enabled organisations to take on a young person who was really keen to do an apprenticeship but wasn't quite ready for it. They gave them the training, they gave them the skills, and it was highly successful in translating those young people into a full-time apprenticeship. And in fact, I met a great example of that at the time as the Minister at Parramatta, where the Motor Traders Association were heavily committed to providing this access point and had a great relationship with a whole lot of motor traders across Parramatta to give very disadvantaged young people the opportunity to skill up and be ready to undertake an apprenticeship. And it just showed you how all of those small and medium businesses across that area were really dedicated to giving young people a go. What happened to that program? Abolished in the 2014 budget. And the last one I want to touch on, although there are many of them in my area that have been cut, is the Joint Group Training Program. Now, group training organisations have been fantastic for decades in employing apprentices and then having them placed with small and medium businesses in order to get the training. And the reason they were set up was because people recognised that it was quite difficult for small and medium businesses to manage the employment, the mentoring, the support, all of that administration and additional work that needs to be wrapped around an apprentice to make a successful completion. In a big organisation, you've got HR departments and people who have the capacity to do that. But for small businesses, they were missing out on taking up apprentices and trainees because of that side of the problem. And so the Joint Group Training Program was funded by governments to group training organisations to ensure and guarantee small and medium businesses will be supported to take on apprentices. Well, I'm very sad to report to the House that in the MyEFO last year it was cut by 20% and now it's completely axed this year. So if we want to talk about providing opportunities for the next generation of small businesses and meeting the requirements of current small businesses who want to get the right skills matched for the jobs that emerge, or just give young people in their area a go. This government needs to have a really good look at the decimation that's created in the skills portfolio, not a single new initiative in this budget, and they are failing the next generation of small business tradies and people who want to give young people a go.